Here's a video explaining why objectively Beachcomber is 100,000 times better than Tigatron. Number 1, he is the better and more subtle peace characters. Now take a look at this clip showing off how selfless and always thinking about others Beachcomber is. You see that? Now let's see the same thing for Tigatron.
No!
What a cunt. Number 2, he's a mini-bot. Number 3, and this is the most important one, he supports Rey Skywalker X Gaff from Star Wars Droids as a ship, and I have to say that is a big... Mini-bots have always been some of my favorite characters in all of Transformers. There's just something so charming about them. They're small, so they're easy to collect, and most importantly, they're some of the most interesting characters when it comes to the Autobots, at least when it comes to the character designs. Now, the 84 ones, they weren't bad, but they were all pretty much cars and trucks, and 86 was mostly just repaints or remolds, but 85 was for sure when we got the best ones. Power Glide, Warpath, Sea Spray, Cosmos, and Beachcomber. I've never been a huge fan of Beachcomber. He's not necessarily bad. In fact, if he released in 84, he'd probably be one of my favorites from that year. But when you compare him to the rest of the mini-bots from 85, he's not as cool. So recently, I bought the new Legacy Evolution Beachcomber, and I wanted to compare it with the old one. Well, old, I mean, this thing came out in 2019. That was 4 years ago. So, how does it compare? So we're going to start off in vehicle mode, as we probably should. That's, I think, the best way, because we saved the robot mode for later. I don't know. I actually think that I might prefer the original, but it is close. I really like how clean the new one is. It's so smooth and simplistic. The shape is nice, or at least the continuation of the blue. It's also got some grading that's very good. This feels like a high-end toy for Beachcomber, whereas this is more about the shape of things. I like the shape of the vehicle, but it almost feels like Wheelie, the old Wheelie toy. It's very nice. I quite like it, though it does look a little bit separated with this and this, where obviously this isn't nearly as big of a problem. But I think the main thing is I actually did check the accuracy, and while this is mostly more accurate, the shape, when it comes to the front, which I think is the most important part of the vehicle, is actually closer here, at least when it comes to the headlights. This is just way too long. It's kind of funny because it's a mini-bot, but I think they overcompensated with the fact that people complained about Cliff Jumper, and I know Cliff Jumper and Bumblebee were the smallest of the mini-bots when it came to the show, and they're basing the accuracy on the show and not the toys, so that's why he's a little bigger, but I feel like this is a bit too much. Now, I will say that the new one does have an actual interior. I don't know if it was worth it. You'll see what I mean in a second. But there is some nice detailing in here. You can see a steering wheel, though it doesn't stick out very far. There's a couple of other details. It's all nice and well done. As opposed to this, which was just used for the little Prime Masters or Headmasters or whatever you want to call it. And as such, while there's still some good detailing inside, it's much less impressive looking. Oh wait, there's a steering wheel. Okay, well, you know what, fuck it. Something they advertised with this one is that the tires are rubber, and while you can't squish it this way because a majority of the tire is still the inside and it's hard plastic or die-cast metal. It's probably not die-cast metal, what the fuck am I saying? But yeah, the tires themselves are nice and rubber, which is something that they advertised, and it really reminded me of Mitch Santona when he introduced me to, I'd say, most of the mini-bots for the first time. He talked about how he replaced the shitty wheels with nice rubber wheels, and he painted the hand gold, which I really need to do. So, which one has the better rolling? Because, well, I mean, the wheels here do roll pretty well, as opposed to these, which do roll pretty well, but they seem to stop shorter. So let's give it a go. Okay, now I'm going to push this exactly the same. Okay, well, I think that one wins. Let's Let's do it at the same time. Yeah, actually the old one might roll a little better. Although it does have the little pegs here, which for some reason drive Transformers fans up the fucking wall. So let's talk about the undercarriage. They're both obviously a robot mode, facing upside down. I'm not sure which one looks better. The gaps here do look quite ugly, and those are just some really defined shoulders, but you can see the legs and the waist here. It's pretty obvious. So, I mean, I don't know. Neither of them look good from the underside, but that doesn't really matter, does it? If you look closely, it's actually sitting on that as opposed to the wheels, which is why it probably doesn't roll very well. So that's kind of unfortunate. But fret not. We're not done yet, because this one does have a couple of weapons or accessories that I showed earlier but took off because I wanted to show it later. So just ignore that. First up, we have the thing that everyone loves to talk about.
It's a little tiny stupid fucking
parakeet, which I think I remember him being like, how do I say bird in bird, or something stupid like that. The Transformers show fucking sucks. And it just plugs in right there, so it kind of just chills. Kind of nice, though. I do have to say that with the rubber, I do feel like that this could either be lost or also could snap. This feels a little flimsy right here. The connection between the bird and the base, it's a little uncomfortable. Also, the paint applications are a little rough, at least on mine. You can see some blotches both on the tail and elsewhere. But hey, it's a nice feature they added. I don't know how much of the budget this took up because it seems like a simple thing to add, but it is effective. And he also has his gun, which is supposed to plug in for his Evo Fusion gimmick. Shut the fuck up. This is not an Evo Fusion gimmick. This is just what we call weapon storage. I think it's a cute idea. Beachcomber's not really known for his gun, so they're like, okay, just make his gun look stupid. Add some details on the front so it can look like the front grille of a vehicle. But I don't know if it's particularly well done. It's asymmetrical a little bit. You see the top, it doesn't really line up with the middle, which is this line. And as such, it looks like it's a little bit to the right. Not to mention, you also see the gun right here and that there. Not much you can do about that, but all I'm saying is I wish they could move this detail a little bit, like, to the left. I feel like that would have made it a lot better of a gimmick. But, I mean, as it stands, it's still kind of nice to have, I guess. And adding these two, well, it doesn't really do much. It's not mandatory. Can you plug in, you fucking... is very appreciated. And it does look nice, so that's pretty cool. So in terms of vehicle modes, I'm not entirely sure which one I prefer. Beachcombers does look nicer, but I think the wideness kind of takes away the charm of the dune buggy mode for me, but it does have a lot of nice details. I'm gonna have to go ahead and say it's a bit of a draw here. So let's go over transformation. Now, ever since my Scourge review, I've done a montage for the transformation. But I don't need to do it with this one because it's really, really short. You ready? Here we go. Make sure that's all the way down. There you go. Beachcomber. Let's transform it back because I also happen to do that. This is the only difficult part. Just plugging that in, make sure that's there. There you go. Then there you go. That's it. You know what, though? I don't actually mind the simplistic transformation. Because what I really liked about these Legends mini-bots, and what really makes me sad that they didn't finish this, is that they're about as simple as the old toys, but they have new engineering so that they actually have articulation. Because what really is this? Well, you move the legs down, you flip the head out, but instead of doing that, you just push it in. You also move the arms forward. There you go. There's a couple of other simple things you do with the little, I don't know what you would call that, wire frames, whatever. But it's a very nice and simple transformation. It's fun to do. So, you know what? That's cool. I enjoyed that. It's simple, but it's effective. But the funny thing is, this new one's engineering is very similar to this one. So let's actually get into it. Do I add the music? Yeah, fuck it, why not? The first thing you need to know is that you need to fold these flaps out. It's pretty cool that it has that, but you need to do that in order to separate the legs. You also need to fold these back in as quick as possible because you're going to have both of these fold up against the flap. Other than that, it's very, 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 very similar, though you do want to push this in before you collapse the waist, and I would suggest that you push on this as you're pushing it down so that it can go upwards and allow the waist swivel, which we will talk about in a second. Update, I didn't know about this, but when you push this down, there actually are 2 tabs that plug into here, so that's why, yeah, it actually does plug in. I didn't know that. So don't pull this out, you gotta actually unplug this before you pull it out. It's pretty tight either way, so I didn't really notice that and help by reading the instructions. The one time I didn't read the instructions. Just like this figure, when you're transforming this back, make sure that this is plugged in before you do any knee bending. Also, while you're pushing this in, you want to make sure that these pegs go into there. It could be a little bit weird making sure that they both go in at around the same time. That's probably the only part I would say that's difficult about the transformation, but otherwise just fold this back up, plug this into place, and you're ready to go. And that was the transformation. Overall, pretty simple and fun, though it is really interesting that most of the steps for this one actually has nothing to do with fixing this. I'd say really the only step that's just improving this is making sure that this goes through the body and not just laying on the back, which kind of looks bad. And the flaps on the back of the legs that mostly are just added so it's less hollow, which is greatly appreciated. Most of the new stuff actually are just these car parts, these car seats. It's actually very interesting, though it is pretty interesting to consider how, despite the fact that they both do this, how differently they are. If you take a look at this, the undercarriage of this part is mostly just molded to be very similar to this because this is the entire body part that just goes over this and covers it up. Whereas this is basically taking the top part of the body and the bottom part of the body, and it's separated by this blue section, and when you push it down, it now is complete, which this is actually superior because it allows for a waist swivel, whereas it's basically impossible when you go with this design philosophy to get a proper waist swivel unless you want to make the waist swivel like right there. I'd say of the transformation, I probably prefer this one because it's just simple and fun, whereas this still is basically the same transformation, but a little bit more annoying. So there you go. The transformation actually goes to this one, and the car mode is also a tie, so it seems that this new Legacy figure is a bit of a downgrade, right? No, because now we gotta take a look at the robot modes, and you know, when this came out, I actually thought this was an incredible robot mode. This is because I compared it to some of the other figures like Brawn and Windcharger, which are decent, but not exactly what I'd call spitting images, whereas this is actually pretty close. But with this new one, it makes me realize how awkward the proportions of this one are. He's got a giant body, tiny head, giant and massive arms, and these tiny little feet, which look a lot worse when you bend the knee. So he kind of has proportions of Beast Machine's Rat Trap, which makes him a little unsightly, and I didn't realize how much better this new robot mode is. It's also a lot more lean if you turn it from the side. The back is very nice and clean, whereas this juts out a little bit. It's got this section of the car here, which is just kind of ugly. They cleaned it up on this a lot better. And also, no hollow parts anywhere. Like, there's a little bit right here, a little bit right here, and some hollow parts along the arms, whereas I don't think that's anywhere on the... Okay, well, there's like that little half circle that's really tiny. Can't wait for the third-party upgrades for that. It'd be like $20 because Transformer fans are fucking idiots. But otherwise, it's completely...
Fucking seriously? Who the fuck built this piece of shit?
Oh, that part too. Oh, no. Oh, what a deal breaker. This figure sucks, doesn't it? Can't wait to hear some schizo on Twitter or like a Facebook group complain about how bad Hasbro is because of that or like that, and how the $400 figure or like, I'll be generous, $60 figure doesn't have those, but is basically the same figure. I love Transformers fans. They're cool. But ignoring those minor little problems, this figure is nice and solid. And this might sound weird and it may sound mean, but it's just the honest truth. When I took this thing out of the package, it really felt, yes, substantial and heavy, but also like an RED figure. And I know a lot of people say that the quality on those is bad, but I liked how it felt. And you know what? The plastic here is very high quality. So, you know, it's not really a bad thing. It's just very substantial, is what I'm trying to say. And it's very unique. I think there's some swirls on the plastic too, somewhere. I can't remember where it is, but just trust me, it's there. Oh yeah, it's on his crotch. There you go. It's actually, you can kind of see like these little circles right there. Can you see that? Yeah, it definitely feels like an RED figure, but I don't really find that as a bad thing. I think it's actually kind of cool. I'd say overall the details when it comes to the robot mode are a lot better on here. It doesn't have the Autobot logo on the front. I forgot to mention that, but like, shows you how much I care about that. The chests themselves are actually pretty interesting. This detail is toy accurate, whereas this is show accurate because, you know, he's already got the Autobot symbol right there, and well, there it is on the toy. Although this is both toy and show accurate, I don't know what they were trying to do there. I mean, it's got more detail, but it also just looks kind of dumb, so don't know what that's about. Also, this entire body painted. Like, this is actual gray plastic, this is painted on, and there's a little bit of instance of paint chipping, like mostly just right there. It's, I guess it's evident right there, but it looks kind of dumb, whereas this is, for the most part, I think just plastic. I mean, there's obviously a couple of parts, like the silver is painted, but for the most part, you know, that's not gonna chip just by, I don't know, doing this. The one thing I don't like about this one, though, is the heels, because it has these, but also this gets in the way, and it... See what I mean? I just want to make sure. Let me check to see if I didn't do anything wrong, because I didn't actually look at the instructions to see if I transformed it right or wrong, because it's just this figure. Well, give me a second. Nope, I looked into it, and this is the correct, at least to my knowledge, way to do it. Maybe you can push this back a little bit. Yeah, maybe you can, but no, I mean, it still sticks out downwards a considerable amount. Okay, no, stand up. Now you go like that. No, I mean, it's still, even though it's pushed up all the way it can, there's still like a considerable piece sticking down and out, so it doesn't really sit or stand flat. Don't really love that about it, but, you know, otherwise, it's a considerable upgrade compared to this one, and it's just a lot of improvements. Actually, no, there is one thing. You see those little details on the crotch? Not as accurate here. Fucking terrible figure. Now, when it comes to his accessories, because this figure is actually good, you can plug this in for his gun, and the grill parts don't really detract from the look, though this plug definitely does. And there really isn't a way to plug it on the back, so that could have been cool. Unfortunate, but whatever. And there's also this little parrot guy. You can either put him right there, which is how they tell you to do it, which is kind of cool. Or, and I don't know if this is intentional, but I guess considering the fact that this has no place in vehicle mode, you can do it. You can plug it into his arms so it looks like Soundwave. A really pathetic, smaller, less cool,
Stupid fuck!
Soundwave. So I guess that's one cool thing about Beachcomber. Maybe that's why he was in the 85 line all along. So yeah, when it comes to the definition of the anatomy and pretty much everything, it trumps this old one by a pretty considerable degree. Now, as far as articulation goes, this one's fairly simple. Head is just on a swivel, shoulders are on ball joints, they can go out that far. Ball joint in the elbow, they rotate. Nothing at the waist, ball joint hips that go forward and back and out, but because of, you know, doesn't he look kind of goofy? thigh swivel, and a pretty good knee bend. Because of the fact that this is hollow, that is actually a good thing when it comes to the articulation at least, but obviously no feet articulation. Now when it comes to this new one, you get a ball joint at the head. I'm going to take this off. An actual ball joint, you can of course look left and right, but also a considerable degree up and down. Well, considerable for a Hasbro Transformer figure. Shoulders rotate all the way around. However, despite the fact that they are on a universal joint, which are better than ball joints, it doesn't go out that far. It's not even a T pose, it's just a pickaxe pose. Biceps swivel, and even though the shoulder articulation isn't as good, he does make up for it with a deeper elbow bend. He also does have wrist articulation, which serves no purpose other than the fact that now he can hold his gun sideways. Who's peaceful now, cunt? Aforementioned waist swivel. Legs can go forward that far, back that far, and out not that far. It can actually go out a little bit farther. It can actually, if you fold it that way, go out all the way, which is pretty cool. So if you're a psychopath and you want these facing forward, you can do that. But I'm also going to have to kill you. And of course, that wouldn't have been possible without a thigh swivel. And he gets a knee bend that isn't as good, but it does look a little better when you actually bend the knee, because this looks a little low. I'm going to be honest, it's not helping that anatomy, dude. Whereas this, yeah, it does look a little long from the front, but he actually has long shins, so hey, it's okay. And finally, he has a pretty good ankle pivot. And with the hip and ankle articulation, this is as far as his legs will go out with both feet flat on the floor.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, in terms of articulation, it's, with the exception of the shoulders and I guess the knees, this one, but better in every single way. And that's pretty much the robot mode, with like one or two stupid exceptions. It's just the old one, but better in every single way. And as a comparison, while this one does do a couple of things just a little better, like the transformation, they're both about the same, and when it comes to the vehicle modes, they both have their strengths and their weaknesses. But when it comes to the actual figure itself, well, I didn't initially want to get this because it's like, well, I already have this one, and it is still a good toy even after this new one. It's basically just showing off their improvements since then, which, you know what? As a artist myself, I think it's pretty cool. I had a playthrough where I made a bunch of Pokemon Miis, and I wasn't very satisfied with them, although there were some good Pokemon Miis and some from time to time. But I was so dissatisfied that I actually remade the entire playthrough a year later, and I was even so crazy that I even bought a second Nintendo Switch Online account so I could port it all into one place. And when I showed off the new ones, I had an old versus new, just to show them off. And even though some of them are drastic upgrades, some of them are only a little bit, but it's still cool to see. And that's kind of how I feel with this. It's Hasbro saying, yeah, we had this good figure which had engineering that works. Now with the new budget and just how much we've learned, we're going to make the same toy, but just way better. My only complaint with making Beachcomber is the same one I had when this was announced, and that is, even though it's cool that you made a lot of improvements, even with good toys, you still probably could have waited at least a little bit, because Power Glide and Gears are characters that I think are a little bit more important than Beachcomber. Their older toys were much worse, and they're also older, so I feel like it would have been cool to get updates on those two as opposed to Beachcomber. I haven't heard anything about the other two, though I could be wrong, and they may be getting new figures, but like I said from my previous video, I'm not looking at leaks anymore. Which I'm probably going to break that rule, so just disregard that information. So that is a little disappointing that we could have gotten a really cool Power Glide or a really cool Gears, but instead we got another Beachcomber. But hey, let's not dwell on what we didn't get and focus on what we got. And what we got is basically a mini masterpiece. I don't really know any major improvements they can make to this other than, I don't know, maybe the heels and maybe shrink the vehicle mode's front a little bit to make it a little bit more slim, but like other than that, congratulations Hasbro, you made a nearly perfect figure. I'm not giving this guy an S because in order to get an S isn't basically perfect. You still gotta do a lot of cool engineering, and this one's still simplistic. It's kind of like Optimus Primal or the Scorponok or Kickback, like, yeah, they're pretty close to perfect, but also the solution was pretty obvious to solve. It didn't really do that much unique, but the effort's still good, so it still gets an A. So that was my review of Legacy Evolution Beachcomber, as well as this old Power of the Primes one. I'm not going to get rid of this one. I'm still going to keep it because it does still have a place in my collection, which is just small Legends class, simple but good and well articulated mini bots, which is something that, as cool as these new mini bots are, they kind of are lacking that. So it's just cool. I got 2 Beachcombers. I don't need to sell one. Yeah, I'm that far gone. I own multiple figures of even the Beachcomber.